The people that I liked and had not met went to the big cafes because they were lost in them and no one noticed them and they could be alone in them and be together. Ernest Hemingway, A Movable Feast. Loneliness, experts keep stressing, is a public health crisis. Loneliness and weak social connections are associated with a reduction in lifespan similar to that caused by smoking 15 cigarettes a day and even greater than that associated with obesity, former U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy wrote in 2017 in the Harvard Business Review. It's true that in recent years loneliness has been linked to higher rates of early death, heart disease, depression, drug and alcohol abuse, and suicide. Anti-loneliness campaigns have been launched in England, Australia, and Denmark. It's estimated that 500,000 people in Japan live as modern-day hermits called hikikomori, people who shut themselves in their homes. Loneliness as a phenomenon is often attributed to the elderly, and the effects it can have on their health have been studied more thoroughly than other groups. But according to a recent survey by the health insurance company Cigna, the loneliest Americans are young adults, specifically Generation Z. That same survey found that heavy social media users had loneliness scores similar to people who had never sent a tweet or a snap. And many people report feeling lonely even if they are surrounded by others. A 2012 study from the University of California, San Francisco surveyed 1,604 older adults and found that 43% said they felt lonely, even though only 18% actually lived alone. Loneliness is a feeling rather than a behavior, like smoking or being sedentary. That's why people can say they feel lonely even when they have close friends, a loving family, or a supportive partner. On the other hand, there are others, typically regarded as introverts, who are comfortable being alone and yet rarely experience loneliness. For example, I almost never feel lonely even though I work at home and have moved so many times that my social life is minimal. Thankfully, it appears my preference for solitude will not be the death of me. Experts say loneliness and its adverse effects are mostly related to how a person regards their solitude. Whereas introversion refers to the preference for low levels of social involvement, loneliness refers to the perception that one's social relationships are inadequate in light of one's preferences for social involvement, wrote John Cacioppo, the late pioneer of loneliness studies at the University of Chicago, in a 2014 study in the journal Psychological Bulletin. The most toxic mental and physical health effects of loneliness were found to be associated with perceived isolation. We have to be careful not to make assumptions, says Carla Parasinotto, Associate Professor of Medicine in the Division of Geriatrics at the University of California, San Francisco. Just because someone is living alone does not mean that they are lonely. It's completely subjective. And not only is introversion not a health risk, but introverts may have something to teach the world about how to be comfortable alone. There's a pleasure that introverts take in observing and taking the world inside of them. That's a skill that can be cultivated, says Dr. Lori Helgo, author of Introvert Power, Why Your Inner Life is Your Hidden Strength, and Associate Professor of Behavioral Science at the Ross University School of Medicine. Because America is an extrovert-focused society, introverts learn social skills in order to be more outgoing, but rarely are extroverts taught solitude skills, Helgo says. Teaching adults, and kids, to be okay on their own could head off the perception that alone time is inherently distressing. Learning to be content in your own company is a vital life skill, writes educator Danielle Miller, who teaches reliance and self-esteem in Australian schools. Helgo agrees, also calling the capacity to be alone a higher-level skill for kids. Because America is an extrovert-focused society, introverts learn social skills in order to be more outgoing, but rarely are extroverts taught solitude skills. To cultivate these skills, people should imitate what introverts like to do, Helgo says. She suggests participating in activities that elicit inspiration without being surrounded by a gaggle of acquaintances. This may include reading or attending group experiences like lectures, concerts, sporting events, or a political rally, solo. That group experience of connection can transcend any individual relationship, Helgo says. Practicing these activities, in the same way that introverts are advised to rehearse how to make small talk at a social event, may help the lonely person find connection and confidence in solitude. The endurance hiker Jennifer Farr Davis says she is proof that enjoying time spent alone can be learned. When she tackled the Appalachian Trail solo, she says she felt awkward and lost at first. The more I got used to it, the more I realized it was awesome, she says. It was such a gift not to feel like I needed to react or respond or produce, I could just be. And that is the moment I started to learn about who I was. Far Davis continues to solo hike because she finds silence enables her to feel true peace. It's important to remember that everyone gets lonely sometimes, including introverts. Solving the loneliness epidemic will mean looking more deeply at the reasons why people are lonely, whether it's due to loss, a lack of access to a community, a fundamental discomfort with themselves, or a misperception of how life should look due to social media influence. There won't be a one-size-fits-all answer, says Parasinodo. One of the challenges is that if we only take a generalist approach and don't think further about how people are lonely, we are going to fail at solving it. Assuming that people who prefer solitude are lonely reveals a cultural bias toward extroversion that's unhelpful. If introversion can be accepted as a natural state of being, one that might even lend resilience, it could lead to a clearer understanding of who is truly suffering from loneliness, and how to combat it. We might even ask different questions, says Parasinodo. If you make it to age 90 and you're living alone, what are you doing right?